Okay, hey, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. So I have a really cool comparison for you guys from Citizen and Seiko. Now, the last time I compared a Citizen and a Seiko, the comment section was a bit of a battlefield. I think Citizen fans are going to be a little bit more pleased with the outcome of this particular comparison because it's definitely more Citizen leaning. I'm just going to say that from the gates. In terms of execution, in terms of attention to detail, I do feel like the Citizen is a better built watch. Now, in terms of just to the eye and to the design, in terms of some of the proportions and the balance and the aesthetics, I still do believe Seiko just makes better looking watches. I think the design of the Seiko is better. I wish it was executed to a higher level, but the design itself, for me, in terms of the length of the hands, the spacing of the dial to bezel ratio, those types of things, I still find myself gravitating towards the Seiko. Surprisingly enough. And some of you are gravitating towards the fact that bezel looks slightly misaligned, and you'd be right. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these two pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so before we dive in, both of these watches were sourced from Sakura Watches, and Sakura's even been kind enough to add a very nice discount code for all of my viewers, which is ABROS3P25, which is going to give you a 3% discount on any Casio, Seiko, or Citizen watch from their site. And yes, both of these are currently options you can get from their site. Now let's just get this out of the way in terms of which one looks better. In my opinion, which is completely subjective. Of course, I can scoot that up. Yeah, that's right. I got it to align. In terms of just at a glance, I will say I do prefer to look at this Seiko. Does it look more expensive? Does it look more higher quality than this Citizen? Absolutely not. This Citizen looks like a more expensive watch, and it is slightly more expensive, but really not by much. But these do have a lot in common besides being ISO compliant solar divers from Japanese brands with a whole lot of heritage. Citizen being founded in 1918 by both Japanese and Swiss investors versus Seiko founded in 1881. Of course, Japanese in origin, now have factories throughout Asia. So both of these are really, from two titans of the space. Both of these brands really helped contribute to the quartz crisis of the 1970s, which really rocked the foundation of classic mechanical watchmaking, because while the Swiss were introducing quartz watches as high-end luxury pieces that were more expensive in many cases than the comparable mechanical-based movements of the time, Seiko and Citizen were making higher accuracy movements for much cheaper. And when I say higher accuracy, I mean higher accuracy than mechanical. But they were still, of course, quite accurate, but again, at a much cheaper price point. So as much as this idea of quartz being the future and this premium product, where these Japanese brands came into play, is really kind of turning that on its head and making it this really affordable, approachable thing. Now, there are going to be some basic differences, but they do share similar specs. 41 millimeters in diameter. They're both about 11.6 millimeters thick. And then in terms of the lug to lug, the Seiko is going to be a little bit longer at 48.5 versus about 47.3 for the Citizen. And you can see even the case profile there, this one wraps a little bit more, has a bit of a thinner mid-case profile. Here, of course, with that, less complex case side finishing, which is just a high polish there, it's a little bit flatter. It still, curves naturally. It has a nice organic flow to it, but it doesn't hug the wrist quite as well, and it just has a generally less complex finish. Same goes for the bracelet. The bracelet is head and shoulders nicer on the Citizen, which can be the case many times over. Citizen does make some pretty nice bracelets. Also the clasp, as much as I don't think that this is a great toolless micro adjust, because it's not. It's actually a ratcheting dive suit extension. So somebody who says that when it gets hot they want to open up, that's just, you're not going to do that. Like giving it a click, that's doable, but it just makes this clasp that much larger. So I'm not huge on that, but I do think as a ratcheting dive suit extension, it's very cool and a much, I'd say, more functional use than this, which is definitely going to be more tucked away, obviously. Now, did I get into the prices? So the Citizen is going to be $450 about list, and then $393 from Sakura Watches, whereas the Seiko's MSRP is going to be a little bit more expensive at $525, but in terms of how much it's actually on sale for, it's going to be $348 also at Sakura Watches. Of course, there's going to be a certain amount of timing depending on when you watch this, and then that yen rate exchange to US dollars, so let's keep that in mind. But in terms of the movements and everything, similar, right? You're going to get, of course, both solar quartz, one known as Echo Drive. They're both going to be plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Although the Seiko does have a 10-month power reserve versus the Citizen having a 60-month power reserve. The bezel action here, 60 click. Let's hear it. Nice. That's a nice 60 click bezel. Of course, it is an aluminum insert. Both of them have that. This is going to be more of the coated style. So a bit more hollow and tinny in terms of the feel. But here you're going to have something that's a bit more of a solid chunk with some engraving on it. And then 120 click. Most folks prefer 120 click bezel just because it's a little tighter, so it feels more precise by nature. But what I do like about both of these are that they do have shielded loom pips, so that in terms of dirt and patina on that pip, that's great because it protects it. But you can see definitely different execution in terms of these bezel inserts. This one's going to be a lot more legible with the engraving, and then it being filled and painted with that white indexing, versus here it's basically a negative space, and then you're seeing the color of the aluminum shine through, and you can see sometimes it doesn't shine through depending on the light. And I do feel that the handset seems a bit small, but some will think, hey, I like this. I like that it looks a little bit funky. And I agree to a certain extent. It does have a cool, funky look, and you can see definitely trying harder in terms of the chamfers and the beveling there. This is beautiful. I wish they would have done their Fujitsu challenge diver to this level of quality, because this is a lot more impressive. I was hugely let down by that watch, and people really killed me in the comments because I was unhappy with it, and they just wanted to convince me that it's okay, that it was bad, and it was low quality because that's the best that they could do. Citizen did better with this, and someone's gonna say, "Oh, well, it's steel, it's so much easier." Dude, watch the video. I literally compare it to other Citizen divers made out of titanium that were done much better. So great design, but just not done to a high level that I felt was commensurate with the level of the design iconography and how clean that looked. This isn't as nice of a design, but the execution is so much better. So I really like this one. I like the striations there on the dial. This is going to be a lot more plain. Again, very old school, very bare bones. Some are really like that. Some people are going to say, I don't care that this is a bad Seiko bracelet because I'm just going to put this on a rubber dive strap, or I'm going to put it on a nylon NATO style pass-through strap, so it doesn't matter. And I can't argue with that logic. It's just one of the facts of life. And also because of how popular Seikos are, it's only a matter of time before somebody figures out an aftermarket option that probably is also cross compatible. So things like that happen. And if there isn't one, there are brands that live off of creating solid bracelet options, Mark from Long Island Watches being one of them. So if he starts stocking these, guess what? He's going to probably make a bracelet for them, and it's going to blow the doors off of this bracelet. But although I'll say this one is perfectly nice, and I do like, again, I'm very impressed by this watch. I do like it a lot. But then again, when you compare them, right, they both have sapphire crystals. They both have 200 meters of water resistance, raised indices, all the goodies in terms of what you need from a tool watch. Yes, a tool watch. So everyone that was screaming at the screen when I was saying the Fuji could have been executed better, yes, this also could have been executed better. But some of you will just say, hey, it's a tool watch. It doesn't need to be nicer than this. And that's fair as well. But I do appreciate the extra effort. It's a bit mind-boggling that they were able to put together something like this at such a competitive price. And then again, with their 9000 series movement, they just weren't able to nail it in terms of balancing design and execution. So these are both fantastic. With that said, let's actually get them on the wrist and quickly see how they wear. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this looks quite nice. But on the other side, hey, also quite nice. Yes, really well done. The light plays on this one. Again, the quality here on this Citizen is really higher level than it needs to be. That extra level of effort I absolutely appreciate in terms of execution. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens, you're going to notice quite a bit of distortion, perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem a lot larger. So I'll keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here. And although I do have a slightly larger than average wrist at 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, it's quite a tall and round wrist. So it's not like I have this big, flat, wide wrist for tons of real estate. I do pay attention to things like lug to lug, overall proportions and dimensions. And you can see this has more of a rounded feel to it. It's quite a bit more organic and flowy on the wrist versus here. Definitely a little bit more plain and simple, more to the point. It's not really doing anything to impress you. It's just trying to give you what it which is a legible tool watch. So this one definitely, I feel Seiko probably handicapped to this one a bit. I mean, apart from the fact that it does have a sapphire crystal, which is great. I think they did, try to make sure that this wasn't going to cannibalize any of their mechanical entry-level Prospex mechanical dive watches in terms of price points. Whereas Citizen is so known for their Echo Drive movements. This for me is them really flexing and saying, hey, look, like we do this really, really well. Oh, is it the alignment? How's that on there? Am I short? It's just a parallax effect. So that's one of the things that you have to also consider when you look at how tall the rehaut is. So how far away the distance of the dial is from the bezel, which means at angle, it can make things seem more off than they actually are. That's actually right on point versus here, thanks to that sloped chapter ring, it's going to just give you a bit more of an illusion and kind of get around some of the absolute alignment. But I will say again, there's enough rock play there in terms of you can rock the bezel slightly forward of the click before the next click to align it perfectly. But being a Seiko, look at that chapter ring, slight misalignment on one end. So, it's something you kind of live with. Again, I don't think these watches are going to be anybody's grail watch by any means, but they are quite nice. And for folks that don't get too excited about wristwatches, I could easily see these being awesome little gateway watches. So with that said, let's get them off the wrist, set up for some Loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, check it out. Both of them have outstanding loom, guys. In terms of the edge, it's tough to call. I mean, I feel like to the eye, the Seiko might have a very ever so slight edge there, but I wouldn't be at all upset in the comments if somebody said they preferred the tonality of the Citizen, because you know what? Some people just prefer Citizen, and that's fine. I personally, again, I prefer Seiko, but I will acknowledge the Citizen is a nicer watch. But there's a lot of watches that are nicer. That doesn't necessarily make them more desirable to me. And then there are little things like, again, that bezel insert execution, which, look at the difference functionality-wise in mixed lighting. You don't have to rely on any reflection. You just have to, you know, get a little bit of light. And that's legible versus the dive bezel on the Citizen. Not quite legible without, again, some reflectivity there. But one thing I like to do is, of course, work in that low light transition, because you're not going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath the overhangs, just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see with these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. You can see, again, more refinement from the Citizen. Look at the dial texturing, whereas the Seiko is going to be very much plain Jane. They both have 20mm lugs. The Seiko does have drilled lugs, which is nice, but it's not necessary. And honestly, with the bracelet as nice as it is on the Citizen, I'm a huge bracelet wearer. Although I do enjoy other options, I find myself just coming back to steel bracelets, so that's where I end up. But I will say, of course, the bracelet is much nicer in pretty much every way on the Citizen. And I have no problem admitting when something is of a higher quality and a higher grade. It does cost a little bit more, but again, the MSRP isn't higher. It's really just the actual, sale or the street price, if you will. So I think these are both outstanding watches. And again, some crowds are going to lean one direction or the other. If you're looking if you're not into either brands and you're just saying, well, I want to buy the more quality piece, buy the Citizen watch. As long as you're okay with the aesthetic, you will absolutely be, I think, very pleased when it comes to the level of execution. Now, if you're somebody that is looking at this saying, man, I like the Seiko, but I like the bullet points on the Citizen, don't buy bullet points. You don't wear bullet points. You don't wear comparisons. You wear the actual watch. So whichever one you gravitate towards is the one that gets you excited to wear a dive watch on a daily basis. Wear that one. Buy that one. But if you buy either of these, you're going to be quite pleased. If you're big on strap exchanges, okay, the Seiko, it gives you a bit of an incentive because the bracelet's not great, and you do have drilled lugs, so you can put this on a lot of different straps and etc. there. Now, in terms of the styling here, they both look great. I will say that, again, I've done full reviews of each of these models, separate videos dedicated, so going over every little spec here and there. So if you want more details on either of these, check out those dedicated videos in the, in my site history and my channel history there. But yeah, I think these are both outstanding. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Everyone celebrate and rejoice, throw the confetti, because Citizen won this battle. So I know people love any chance they can get to be upset at Seiko inside of YouTube comment sections. So rejoice! Here is your opportunity. And for those of you that are watching this thinking, wow, that Seiko looks pretty sweet, you'll be okay too. If you want this Seiko watch more than you want the Citizen, it's fine. It's just kind of the way it is. You want what you want, and you wear what you wear. It doesn't really matter what I have to say. But if you are on the fence, hopefully my feedback has been helpful. All right, guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you're not already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.